You're listening to Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe. Hello and welcome to Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe 2011. I'm Thos Ribbits. And it's a bit ironic that I'm going to the Fringe because I'm 112 years old, I have almost no hair, so it's been many years since I've had one myself. Well, the Edinburgh Fringe, what can we say about it? Every year, it's the biggest arts festival in the world, and it's got something for everybody. If you like comedy, if you like straight drama, if you like musical theatre, if you like dance or physical theatre, pretty much everything has been catered for. And at the same time in Edinburgh, there's also the Edinburgh Festival proper. That's the International Edinburgh Festival of high drama, shall we say. There's also other things like a television festival, a film festival. All manner of bits and pieces are going on here, or have just happened, or are about to happen. There's also the Edinburgh military tattoo. So you cannot walk through the streets here of Edinburgh without bumping into people performing, people trying to advertise their shows, soldiers, people in kilts, people playing bagpipes, and all manner of street performers, because that's as much a part of the Edinburgh Fringe as everything else. It's a real melting pot of the world. But what about us who love musical theatre? Well, there's no shortage of things for us to see, although I do have to say that in the last couple of years the situation for musical theatre in Edinburgh has gone off the boil a little bit, in that, if you remember correctly, up to a few years ago, there was something called Musicals at George Square, which was a dedicated venue for musical theatre, and what a marvellous thing that was. Unfortunately, last year that didn't happen, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen again. So, musicals have had to go somewhere else, which means they're a bit more dispersed around the schedule, around the city, around the entire period of the Edinburgh Festival. But there's plenty to find. Unfortunately, in my view, slightly fewer than last year, so I think that's the economic situation kicking in. There aren't quite as many musicals on the books this year, and that was illustrated to me because usually what I do is pick the week I want to come to the festival and then work out what the shows are which are on and then make my selection of what I want to see from those. This year there weren't quite enough shows for me to see in the week I wanted to go up, so I had to work out what musicals were on over the whole period and then work out what days I would visit instead. So I rearranged my holiday around the schedule rather than my schedule around my holiday, if you get my drift. Well, this is all very boring, isn't it? Well, I hope it isn't. I hope I'm giving you a bit of an insight into how musical theatre reflects the economic crisis, the political context of a country, or the world in general. Certainly in Edinburgh, I have to say, I do think that the recession has touched the festival in general. There's more free shows this year than ever before. That's a small p political decision by a lot of performers in order not to exclude people from the entire cultural festival that we're getting. But for musical theatre, which is a very expensive form of theatre, in fact one of the most expensive forms of theatre, as you have to have musicians as well as actors, even here at the Fringe for the most part, you can see that there's likely to be slightly fewer musicals than in previous years, and that's a very great pity. But please don't misunderstand me, because I'm going to see 45 shows in 8 days, and I'm going to tell you over the next few weeks here on Musical Talk all about them, or at least quite a number of them. But just to get your taste buds going, gurgling, drooling, dripping, whatever particularly moist, slightly disturbing statement or adjective you want to go for, here's a taste of just some of the ones I've picked, and this is a completely random selection from my schedule of shows to see. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, A Celebration in Song. Instant Sunshine, that's a cabaret group from the 1970s made up of doctors. They're still going strong. If you like, they're another example of that tradition of British musical comedy cabaret that includes Flanders and Swan and Fascinating Aida and Kit and the Widow. Instant Sunshine, and I'm hoping to see them. There's a musical called Circle Line Blues, which is clearly about the Circle Line on London Underground. Apply Within. There's Hitler, the musical, which we'll be hearing more about later today. Some classics. Sunday in the Park with George and Into the Woods are representing Stephen Sondheim this year. Other classics are represented without actually having the musical. There's a very interesting piece called About Gilbert Without Sullivan, which is a performance of some of Gilbert's non-Sullivan works. We're no stranger to that here in Musical Talk, as you can imagine. There's a couple of shows which aren't actually twinned, but go together very beautifully, complementary shows. There's the life story of Doris Day up here at the moment, called A Sentimental Journey, the story of Doris Day. But there's also another show with music called Doris Day Can F Off. and you can make of that what you will. I'm hoping to see both shows, so I'll give you the happy insight. There's Evil, the musical. There's a gay version of Sweet Charity. There are 2 pantomimes, Jack and the Beanstalk and Aladdin, both advertised as adult pantomimes. One's on at midnight and one's on at 11 o'clock in the morning, so it'll be interesting to see how they do that. There's shows we've already mentioned on Musical Talk, such as Not So Far to Reach, Miracles at Short Notice. There's Mr. Ben, that's playing up here. There are musical versions of Shakespeare. We've got the Hamlet House of Horror, a musical Much Ado. There's a musical about the plague in Eyam, spelt E-Y-A-M, which is a northern town here in Britain, which famously stopped spreading the plague in the local area by, when plague struck there, they stayed where they were. That's been turned into a musical, and very interesting that looks too. And there's a whole host of other things. Well, that's quite enough of an overture for the whole festival. So what are we going to hear about today? Well, I'm glad you asked me that, although, once again, you've used my voice to do so. So today we're going to be talking, at least briefly, about 4 shows which are up in Edinburgh, and we'll be hearing music and songs which will be featured in most of them. So, what have we got? Well, our old friend Lily LaScala. She's a beautiful woman and a beautiful singer. She sings a selection of songs from the 20s, 30s and 40s, if you like, classic standards, most of which were written for musicals or as standalone songs, and she combines those with stories and narrative. She's in a show called Songs to Make You Smile, and we'll be hearing from her in just a minute. Then there, of course, is Hitler the Musical, which, as I said in an episode a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned in passing to a friend of mine in a pub, and he snorted with laughter so suddenly that he spilled his drink. And we'll be hearing from some of the creative people behind that. After that, it's another old friend of Musical Talks. That's Fresher the Musical. You may remember that we made it one of our 5-star shows last year. It's a wonderful, upbeat comedy musical about the first week at university, and it's very accomplished. Last year I interviewed Mark Aspinall about it. He's the writer of the music and the lyrics, and delightfully it's up in Edinburgh again this year, and Tim Saywood and I reviewed it after seeing a London preview. And finally, you can hear a song freshly improvised from this year's Edinburgh Fringe by the No Shoes Company and their improvised musical. One of the many improvised musical arrangements and production companies up here, and they're always fabulous and entertaining, and I'm pleased to say we'll be having an interview with them in a later episode. So let's get down to business and start this, shall we say, audio survey, it's quite a pretentious term, and so I don't actually believe it, but we'll go with it anyway, of this year's Edinburgh Fringe. You're listening to Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe. Well, as I said, we start today with an interview with the lovely Lily LaScala. You may remember that last year at Edinburgh, she was responsible for a show called War Notes, which we awarded 5 stars because it was brilliant. And she has a wonderful, evocative voice. We described the show as an evocative delight, in fact. Well, delightfully, she took last year's show on tour, and I recently caught up with her to discuss it at London's Café de Paris. And as part of that interview, we also spoke about Songs to Make You Smile, which is her show in Edinburgh this year, and one I'm much looking forward to hearing about. So here's an interview with Lily, conducted recently, that talks about her plans for the new show. And we also got into the interesting but slightly sticky issue of how to approach songs which come from a different political context, and which now might be deemed inappropriate. But I should warn listeners now that during the course of that discussion, which I think is interesting and a worthwhile discussion to have, 1 or 2 quotations from songs of the period of the 1930s are used, and these contain words which we would now find offensive. So I wanted to warn you about that first. However, I do hope you find the entire conversation interesting and enlightening. And, if you disagree or agree, don't hesitate to write into feedback at MusicalTalk, because it's interesting to hear what our listeners think about such things. And so, without further ado, let's hear from the lovely Lily LaScala, talking about her show, Songs to Make You Smile. But let's talk about next year.
Oh, next year.
Now, we touched upon in our conversation that you were looking at the funny numbers, the comic numbers. Is this the show? Is it manifesting itself?
It is. Songs
Marvellous.
to Make You Smile. Lily's Songs to Make You Smile. It's It's actually a real joy. I'm really enjoying myself.
Could it be anything else?
Well, I didn't just go for comic songs, because I thought a whole show of comedy songs eventually is just, I'm bored of comedy songs. So I went for songs that will make you smile. So it's, obviously there are quite a few comic numbers, but then there are songs in there that will just make you smile. Things like De-Lovely. It's delightful, it's delicious, it's de-lovely. Because it's you can't help but just smile when you hear it, because it's just a happy song. Summer Over the Rainbow is in there because everyone smiles at Summer Over the Rainbow. And then
but it's a bittersweet smile, isn't it, as
exactly.
well?
And because I did, for a long time, I thought about putting You'll Never Walk Alone in there, because although it's a song that will probably make people cry, it should hopefully sort of uplift them.
It's an anthem, isn't it?
It's although it does bring tears, I think you can have happy tears. It's not a sad song as such. It's a keep your chin up, carry on song. But in the end, I liked it too much, so I went into war notes. But there are obviously some very funny numbers in there. Biggest aspidistra in the world,
which is Gracie Fields.
I love Gracie. Actually, when I was in Edinburgh, I had a chap come to see the show, one of the last shows, and he said, I'm friends with Gracie Fields' nephew.
Go on.
And I said, oh, are you? And he said, yes, I'm sure he'd love this show. And I said, yes, I'm sure he would, but I'm sure he'd love the next one more. And funnily enough, I'm looking for a song that I can't find.
One of Gracie's?
What do you buy a nudist for his birthday? Which I couldn't find for love nor money. I couldn't find it anywhere. And so I said, would you mind dropping him an email? Because he has Gracie's entire catalogue of songs.
Really? He's the estate, essentially?
He and his mother have all her songs. So I said, could you drop him an email and just see if he might have a copy of this song? And I didn't really think much more of it, because, if someone takes your email address in Edinburgh, you might as well throw it out of a window. But 5 weeks later, I got this email from this chap with a scan of What Do You Buy a Nudist for His Birthday?
Oh, fantastic.
And it's the most wonderful song. It's all about sort of what do you buy a nudist for his birthday, what sort of present should I buy? And she goes on to say, I went into a shop and thought about buying spats, but the shop woman said, oh, madam, just a madam spats on Adam.
Oh, what a nice lyric.
Yes. And there's things like, her brother's called John Willie. And so there's a line about, I thought of buying a pocket watch, but wouldn't the watch chain look silly hanging down in front of Willie?
I say.
It's so naughty.
That presumably didn't get BBC airplay then.
No. But it's just a very, very slightly risque, awfully gently risque, but very funny song.
So how does one... It's the same question as I asked about War Notes. You've obviously decided to go for a bit of tone, and that's good, songs that make you smile, not just comic numbers. But how do you progress that? When you're trawling, is it once again the fact that you've got such a wide selection, but you can actually say, right, I'm going to go to that cupboard, which is the comedy cupboard?
I had 48 songs that I narrowed it down to. And I thought, I can't do a show of 48 songs.
No. That is your 3 weeks in Edinburgh, yes?
I had 48 songs, and in the end, I actually sort of divided them into two, cut out a few numbers that I just couldn't, things like In the Mood, when I sang through it, I couldn't make it work. I couldn't find a way into it. And so I put it aside because I just think it works better as an instrumental band number.
And you've got to own a number to be able to sing it properly, haven't you?
You've got to own it.
Have some sense of connection.
I really adore the Glenn Miller In the Mood band version. I think it's perfect. And I couldn't bring anything. I couldn't find a way that I could make it special or that I loved it more. And so rather than sing it just for singing it, I'd rather just leave it and listen to it as a Glenn Miller tune. Because I think some songs are perfect as they are, really. So I narrowed it down and cut a few out, and then ended up with 2 shows. So I've got Songs to Make You Smile, which is the one I'm doing, and then I've got Whimsically.
Oh, now I like the sound of that. Every time we meet, you fascinate me. And the problem is you make me want to buy tickets for the rest of your acting career, your singing career, I think.
Yes.
So give me that name again.
Whimsically.
I like that title. And it will look good. I can see that on a poster as well.
Yes, it's just songs that they'll sort of make you chuckle a bit. They're really just songs that aren't necessarily songs to make you smile. There's some love songs in there. I'm actually struggling now to think of what I put in. Things like All the Things You Are.
Oh, yes, right. Joan Kern.
Yeah. You are the something kiss of springtime. It's really beautiful, but it wasn't a song. Although it makes me smile, it wasn't really enough of a smile song. It's more a song that you go, oh. So there's lots of songs like that just make you sort of go, oh.
As you say, whimsy is the very word to describe that.
Yes,
really, in a way,
it's that sort of nice, slightly warm inside, slightly strained. There's a Cole Porter, Miss Otis Regrets.
Oh, right. Now, how are you doing that? Forgive me. Because there's 2 ways.
There are 2 ways?
Oh, yes, there's 2 ways. There's the sincere way, which is the way that most female singers sing it, which is, the Ella Fitzgerald straight version, and it's a very sad song, being related. But have you ever heard... there's a rare recording of Fred Astaire singing it, and
I
it's
have
the
to look it
butler
up.
who's he's playing the butler who's reporting it back to in this case, it was on a TV special he did, and his female dance partner, whose name I've completely forgotten, she was a young lady, played the woman. So she was making deadpan comments back. So she pulled beneath, when he says from under her velvet gown.
She pulled a gun and shot her lover down.
To which
Madam.
To which the response is, "Oh, she should never wear velvet." that kind of stuff. So he's doing it a kind of straight butler to her, and there's these kind of flip comments back, and it works very well. So and that was the first version I ever heard, and I always thought it was a funny song.
I think it's a little bit tongue in cheek.
Oh yes, I think.
I don't think it's when I listen to it, I don't think of it as a really sad song. I think of it as a slightly dark humoured song because you can't help but laugh.
It's macabre.
She's unable to lunch today, madam. It's just so it is really macabre.
He wrote it for a party, I think. It was one of his party pieces,
Oh,
and so it was originally a man
wonderful.
singing it. Yes, it's a lovely song. But I'd say the Ella Fitzgerald version is played absolutely straight.
Yes,
so I'm
and it's even got a sobbing bit at the end, which is...
I'm looking forward to your version already to see which direction you push it.
I think it'll be slightly tongue-in-cheek, of almost as if, the person relating it thinks it's awfully melodramatic.
Knowing as well.
Going and shooting your lover. It's just a bit silly, really.
Bringing down the
Not
tone of the area.
English.
Yes.
And then there'll be some Ivan Novello in Whimsically.
I'm so pleased because Ivan Novello is the subject we haven't yet properly touched upon, and I think there's another conversation in there at some stage.
So there's a song called Dark Music, which is
from which show, I think it's?
Arc de Triomphe.
Oh, now that's one of the ones I don't know at all, even vaguely.
I don't know the show, but the songs are just amazing. It's sing a play something to me in dark music. It's very chromatic and really haunting. It's got a real sort of almost 1930s drawing room feel about it. It's very beautiful. And so there's just lots of songs in there that aren't so much funny as just songs that sort of make you go, oh. Maybe a few sad ones and just lovely.
Just a bit of edge in the humour as well when they're not. Yeah. Do you know? I mean, taking us back to your trawl for these, then, how many songs did you knowingly know? Did you look for songs which women had popularised, or just songs in their own right? And did you find any which were so specifically male that you weren't able to use them, but you'd love to have?
There are some songs that I would really love to use, and I was thinking about Lily, me having a brother called Willie, Willie La Scala, so that I could actually drag up and...
Oh, right. A drag king.
Yes. And sing songs that were typically men's songs, things like And Her Mother Came Too. I would love to sing that
Ivan
song.
Novello, but you can only do that as a man,
you
Yes.
can absolutely only, I suppose in today's day and age, you could perfectly do it as a woman.
Well, yeah.
But really it's definitely, and I could just imagine Willie being in white tie and tails, with a cigarette and a cigarette holder. It would be perfect. So that's something I'm toying with.
You must consider
introducing a brother for myself. But yeah, there are songs, and there's some wonderful ones from Kiss Me Kate. When first, where's the life that late I led? Where is it now? Totally dead. Where's the fun I used to find? Yeah, it's just fabulous.
You're much better than Howard Keel, if you don't mind saying.
God, no, I couldn't be. He's just, he's everything I dream of. He's wonderful.
Oh, he's a bit barrel-chested for me.
No, he's wonderful. Although I have a very strange thing where I adore him. I could listen to him sing all day. He's wonderful. And then I love George Formby as well. So between the two of them, they're like my ideal man. I do watch.
The children will be so strange to look at.
I know. I do look at the old films of George Formby and just think I wish he was alive, or I was alive then, because I know Beryl was wonderful, but I just think we could have made each other so happy.
Well, I can see you and he in films together.
Oh,
bringing him a touch of much needed class, if you don't mind me saying.
I'm doing his song "Fan Like Fanny" in Songs to Make You Smile.
Do you know?
Fan like Fanny, the frowsy nightclub queen.
Without
the northern accent.
But do you know it was covered by Clinton Ford?
Was it?
In the 1960s with George Chisholm on trombone.
Wow.
Done because he did an album of what he called musical memories.
Yeah.
And it was, although strictly it's variety rather than musical, he included that in there.
It's a great song.
It is. It's a fantastic song.
It's so horrible. It's such a bitchy song. But I think it would be different with a girl singing because you get the real sort of bitchiness of girls. Yeah. You know, she's old and she's a has-been Lord knows what. It's just so funny.
I like the one
she says that she's been toasted by her friends. She should have been cremated too. It's awful.
Is that the one when she's compared to? They say that she's a peach because she's always canned.
Because she's always canned, yeah.
Yes.
And you can't tell if she's a brunette or a blonde. She looks like something that you drag out of a pond.
Yes.
She waltzes in the West End shops and waltzes out between two cops.
Fan like
Fanny, the frowsy nightclub queen. It's just great.
That's another one of my favourite songs. But as I say, I came in through the Clinton Ford album to that. Now I do like George Formby.
Oh, I just adore him.
Have you come across
songs are fantastic?
Because obviously he and Gracie Fields are the two great performing stars of the 1930s,
yes.
particularly in terms of musicals.
And I think it's interesting that you couldn't really say that either of them were classic beauties.
No.
You know, neither of them were sort of Hollywood pin-up style performers. But what was great was they were loved for, you know, almost not being Hollywood. They were really British. The girl next door and the boy next door. They were just regular people who had this wonderful gift to just make people laugh, which is fantastic. And you know, if Songs to Make You Smile ends up being a bit of a tribute to those sort of performers, fantastic. I'm throwing in Brush Up Your Shakespeare from Kiss Me Kate, because I thought about doing I Hate Men, but I thought why not you know, think outside the box a little bit and do Brush Up Your Shakespeare.
But do you know that's a rewrite of an older song?
Is it?
It's a replacement song. There was a song called It Ain't Etiquette, because it's still the same two sort of hoodlums, but in the original song, which is still a brilliant song, but was replaced by the even more great
Brush Up Your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now.
But the song, the central premise, isn't it, is by being classy and
by knowing you're a teller, she'll think you're a hell of a fella.
It's all about picking up the ladies, and it ain't etiquette. It's exactly the same concept.
Oh,
it's about, you know, how not to spit out meatballs in your hostess's face because you know you won't pick up the women. I can't give you any lyrics once again, and nor would I pretend to. But another good song. There's a lot of Cole Porter cast-offs which are brilliant.
But they're
numbers.
very hard to find in print. They're very. You know, it's very like I have my sources of places that I go to find music, and obviously, you know, antique shops, antique fairs, stuff like that. I'm always excited in case, you know, I find something, and 9 out of 10 times you don't find anything, and you end up going home with a pile of music that you don't really need, that you just bought just because it looked pretty. But occasionally you find something, you go, oh, I've been looking for this. Like for ages I was looking for the love me or leave me, let me be lonely.
But that's such a well-known song. Is that difficult to come by?
It's very hard to find in print.
Is it really?
And actually I found Making Whippy quite easily, but for a while I couldn't think where to find it, and then I just did a really generic search and found it straight away, which is funny. Sometimes you think, oh no, I can't find it on my places where I normally look, but then you look in a regular music shop and you go, oh, it's there. That's dull. But generally when you find them in generic music shops, they're missing a verse or they're missing a chorus, but you can listen to recordings for that.
I was going to ask you if you've tackled do you know Ronald Franco?
No.
Ronald Franco was a great, slightly risque chap from the 1930s who sang self-penned songs accompanied by a pianist by the name of Monty Crick. And they're all very saucy. He was too saucy for the BBC. He did work for the BBC, but they scripted it rather than him. But he did a lot of stuff for film and cabaret. Well, a lot of his songs... I can provide you with recordings of if you'd just like to listen to them and then see if any. But the thing is, he's very interested in the eternal battle between men and women, and he's not afraid to be upfront about the joys of sex.
Yes.
And there's a lovely duet, which is called "Good Morning, Mr. Barlow, Good Morning, Mrs. Brown," which is it's just repeated verses over and over again with a couple of new lyrics in it, which tells the story of a chap and a woman who are married to other people who meet each other on their constitutional walks on a holiday every day until the whole town is aghast with the scandal.
And then the last one is how their wives and husbands have pulled them away again, and so it's goodbye forever, kind of, Mr. Barlow, and goodbye forever, Mr. Barlow. And then there's other stuff about, there's a song called She Hit Him on the Head with a Hammer, which is about a woman taking into her own hands a way of dealing with over-amorous gentlemen. And he sings it from the point of view of his fella, but actually, when I think about a lot of these songs, they could be
I think there are lots.
sex, yes.
I think there are lots.
But just to mention, I just love Ronald Franco, and it's one of my ambitions
Send
in
them
life
over.
to get
Send them
as
over.
many of his stuff into the public domain as I can.
Send them over. If I can find the music to them, I'll sing them.
Glad to.
One of the songs I'm putting into Whimsically is... no, I'm not. I'm putting it into Songs to Make You Smile. Will be A Man Chases a Girl Until She Catches Him, which is sung by Donald O'Connor.
I don't know this.
Oh, it's in... now, I've completely forgotten. No Business Like Show.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you very much. Noise is off, but very appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, No Business Like Show Business, sung by Donald O'Connor after he's just walked Marilyn Monroe. Have you not seen No Business
Clearly,
Like
well, if I have,
Oh my
I'm forgetting
gosh,
it.
it's fantastic. It's a really great MGM Technicolor
Yeah.
musical. It's got he does this great dance routine where all the statues in the fountain come to life. It's very Gene Kelly, actually, a very Gene Kelly-esque.
Well, he's very Gene Kelly-esque anyway,
Oh,
isn't
he's
he?
marvellous. Oh, I actually almost prefer him as a dancer to Gene Kelly. I find Gene Kelly a bit poncy.
Well, they always call him the truck driver when comparing him to Fred Astaire, and I actually think there's an element of.
But I don't think you can compare Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly because their style is so different.
Yeah.
You know, Fred Astaire is very ballroom. You know, he's very
Smooth, willowy.
he's very smooth, very elegant. Whereas Gene Kelly is much more balletic and athletic, balletic and athletic.
And muscular.
And muscular and sort of quite thick set. Whereas Donald O'Connor he's slightly more lightweight, and he's got quite a lot more character. You know, he's got this really sort of goofy way about him, which is just so charming to watch.
As
So
in
I think-
Singing in the Rain.
As in Singing in the Rain,
He's much nicer
it's almost the same character. I can't say that his acting range was particularly broad, but his dancing is stunning. Just and it's got Marilyn Monroe looking every bit starlet that she was, really. It's got Ethel Merman. Actually, it's quite funny. It's got Donald O'Connor, probably aged about 35, and Ethel Merman, probably
Not.
aged about 45, playing his much older mother. He's meant to be, I think, about 18.
Oh, really? Right.
And there's one scene where she has to put him to bed. It's like
Something wrong there.
He looks like he's about 35. Why are you putting him to bed? And it's obviously the first time he's meant to have got drunk, and it's quite hilarious. But it's a great story.
Did you know that Fred Astaire once had a very gentle pop at Gene Kelly in a song? It wasn't a song by Gene Kelly, so a song by Fred Astaire. It was a song that was written for him by Cole Porter,
Oh, really?
who obviously had provided songs for both of them because Gene Kelly had done Les Girls and The Pirates.
He wasn't the best singer.
No.
But then again, Fred Astaire...
I think Fred Astaire has character, more character. I can listen to Fred Astaire albums
I can't
easily.
listen. Yeah, Gene Kelly, I find
No,
him
I don't.
very hard to listen to.
But in the film version of Silk Stockings...
That one's in there. There's one from...
Oh, it's not Stereophonic Sound, though,
No.
is it? Because in Stereophonic Sound, which is a song I believe it was written specifically for the film version, which Fred Astaire gets to sing, rather than Don Amici, who was on the stage originally with it, he actually sings about you can't be a dancer these days in films unless you're throwing yourself around the stage and putting out your knees, which of course is very much a reference to
Yes.
Gene Kelly being the athletic,
Yep.
balletic, muscular.
Throwing himself around.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Fred doesn't do that so
No,
much. So-
never. You've
Yeah.
never seen... I think the closest he got to that was that dance routine with the balls where he is in the toy shop. Or was that Gene Kelly? No, that was Fred Astaire. And he did the wonderful things with the cane.
Yes.
And the dancing in slow motion when everyone else is dancing in real time. It's just amazing.
So
But
what's the song from
the
Silk
song
Stockings?
from a song from Silk Stockings is it is strange what lovely lingerie can improve a girl's false modesty when she's wearing silk and satin and silk.
I do know that one.
It is, she can never say her pride was hurt should a breeze blow by and lift her skirt if she's wearing silk and satin and silk. Yes, so it's a really cheeky song. It's got this really risque line, which must have been horrendously risque in the 50s, which is something about a burlesque queen if her bra is made of buckram and her G-string is made of rope.
I
And
love
it's
and, was that on stage? I couldn't have got
That
to
was
the
in the
film.
movie.
Was it really? You see,
Yes.
oh, crikey. Yeah, I mean,
But
but Cole Porter was somehow... I think Cole Porter was always given slightly more licence than
I think
any of
so.
the others.
For I took me harp to a party, but nobody asked me to play. The others were jolly and hearty, but I wasn't feeling so gay.
My next question, then, if that's okay, actually, is... Did you come across any songs which were too rude or too saucy or possibly too out of date, which you felt that you couldn't use? You strike me as a fairly fearless performer, if you don't mind me saying.
Some people have commented that I shouldn't sing songs that are overtly racist. But I struggle with that because I think that a lot of, especially sort of the George Formby and some Cole Porter numbers, the racism is used not in a derogatory modern sense. It's used in almost an affectionate way.
Yes, it's casual.
And although it's casual, it's affectionate, it's not malicious. It's like, especially in the George Formby numbers, it's never malicious. It begs the question, is racism always bad? Or, if something is racism but it's not malicious, can you still use it? And I think it would be a real loss to history and to music if these songs were never sung because of this PC society that we live in. And I've consulted my Chinese friends, because, obviously, being slightly racist, I do have Chinese friends. And they say, well, the song isn't malicious. That it's not vicious, it's not mean, it's not horrible. It's actually, in a lot of senses, especially the George Formby numbers, very, very friendly almost. He's saying, the chinks are as much part of our society as everyone else. I mean, there are a couple
of... Is this Mr. Wu and people like that?
Mr. Wu, his whole series of songs featuring Mr. Wu.
And Mr. Wu's always doing good work.
Mr. Wu is always doing good things.
Wardens.
He's an air raid warden, he runs a laundry, he becomes a window cleaner.
Yes.
And there are some...
Famously.
There's a line in that which I would probably struggle to sing about his eyesight's getting better, but his nose is getting flatter because he spends so much time peeking at women through the windows. I would probably struggle with a line like that. I think it's a little bit harsh, but when it's just a word, I think it's fine. There's a song called Hindu Man which I would draw the line at because it's sort of it is a little bit derogatory.
I suppose it depends on what the tone and the sense of the original song was.
Yeah, I
and
think
also
you have to look at it.
Performing in a sophisticated cabaret environment.
I found a song from 1912, 1913. Maybe it was slightly later, but it's I couldn't sing it. It was the one. It was probably the one song I found that I actually drew the line at singing it because it featured lines along the lines of it had several verses, and each of the verses to me just seemed worse than the verse before. The first one was all about people driving cars and how awful it was that all these people speed around, even though the speed limit then was like 6 miles an hour. How people would get run over at that speed, I have absolutely no idea. And then the second verse was all about all these foreigners coming over and stealing English jobs.
Oh, really?
And why didn't we do something about them? And if an Englishman... Oh, and then the third verse was something about if you're an Englishman and you go to jail and you're wearing a suit, you're more likely to get let off easily than if you're just a working class man. And then the fourth verse, which just made me really cross, not really cross because it's historical, was all about how dare they give women a vote. We call ourselves a civilized country, but then we put them into prison. What's civilized about letting them out again was the general. It was really. It was like the most bitter song. It was bitter to everyone. It wasn't just bitter in one direction. It was like the Jerry Sadowitz of songs. It was just bitter in all directions.
Misanthropic.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, I suppose in 1912 we were probably at the height of our xenophobia, just prior to the First World War.
Xenophobic, homophobic, sexist. It was everything in this. I thought the person who wrote this song must have been really miserable, living in the society that it obviously hated.
But do you know who the writer was?
I don't know who the writer was. I haven't actually even looked at the music of the song because I read the words and I had to buy it. I thought I can't possibly leave this song here. I have to own it, but I can't possibly sing it, even though I'm sure there are. What's sad is there are people today who would actually still agree with a lot of those
Some
views.
Of that stuff, yes, absolutely.
Maybe I could just send the song to the BNP and they could make of it what
for their cabaret. Yeah.
The BNP cabaret. Can you imagine?
I don't think I'd enjoy it.
I don't think I'd like to imagine.
But I don't mind saying that, I was just thinking about that in relation to homophobia, of course, because Ronald Franco, who's, as I say, this performer from 1930s who I admire a lot, because it's so much about heterosexual love, I mean, that's his game, he does draw a little bit of fun at gay men. In particular, but
well, of course, it was illegal then.
Absolutely, but known about, of course.
Yes, obviously, and actually quite celebrated in some circles.
Well, in a way, I listen to these songs and I'm never offended at the tone of these songs. There's one called Uncle Bill is Much Improved. He's basically Uncle Bill's a bit of a he's a big old bear of a man, and he likes the ladies until he has his tonsils removed. And Uncle Bill is. I think you got the joke already.
Oh my gosh!
Uncle Bill has much improved since his tonsils were removed. Now his voice is so much higher he sings soprano in the choir. That's the chorus of that one. I'll send you that from Ronald Franco as well.
Oh,
but later on, he becomes very pally with his very less sort of lisping and sibilant brothers and cousins of his acquaintance, and he's not interested in girls anymore. So, but I find that exactly the way you do. I find it very funny. So I'm not offended. So I think you're right. If you know what the context is, and you also know that it's not actually meant maliciously, it's
I would struggle with a song that was quite obviously malicious.
Yes.
And I think that at that point I would, as I did with the song I found, I would draw the line and go, I can't sing that. I don't,
It's too much.
But it's something like Mr. Wu's and Air Raid Warden Now, or the Chinese Laundry Blues, although they are slightly risque nowadays for a completely different reason that they were risque back then. Now they're slightly risque because they're seen as racist. But I think it would be an utter loss if no one ever sung them because they thought they were racist. When I'm Cleaning Windows was actually banned by the BBC in the 40s when
really
it was written.
Just too saucy.
It was banned. It's when someone requested it on the radio, the broadcaster said, "We can't possibly play that song. The windows aren't clean enough." So it's actually it's great. But actually, some of the lines in that are filthy. The bridegroom, he is doing fine. I'd rather have his job than mine when I'm cleaning windows.
Yes, it's you know what's going on there. Because I didn't know this, but I was listening to Russell Davis, who does the Sunday evening programme between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock about the great songbook of music, the storybook of song. It's called, and I recommend it to everyone. But he was saying that when he was a boy. That there were various people who we almost take for granted now, whose material was considered specialist was the word. And George Formby was a specialist singer. Noel Coward, in many senses, was considered specialist and too much for the radio.
Some of his songs are very, almost quite vicious.
Oh yes, there's a good edge to his comedy.
Oh, very, very much so. Because I actually thought about putting London Pride into War Notes, but when I sung it through, it's a nice song, but it's a bit. I felt a bit like about it the same way as I felt about There'll Always Be in England.
Too jingoistic, or
a little too, because I loved There'll Always Be in England, but I felt it was almost a bit preachy.
Tub thumping, yes.
Yeah, I don't think that. For me, especially, I don't think that I need to. Especially because I tour the show internationally.
Yes, of course.
To sing a song called London Pride in the middle of Australia wouldn't really. I don't think it would really fly.
Not unless you told them it was about beer.
London Pride. It's bitter.
Yes.
No, I don't think they know about bitter out there. Yes.
That's very interesting. Yes, you're quite right, because once again, that's the thing. There's nothing offensive about it per se.
There's
but the
nothing
context
offensive
has
about
moved
it.
On a
I
bit
actually felt that. Especially with There'll Always Be in England, I felt it was almost a little bit too BMP. I felt it was almost too English, which is really sad because I'm really proud to be English,
but not British, as it were, in this case.
But it is very much There'll always be in England where there's a country lane. I felt it was almost too preachy to sing. I'm sure I will sing it at some point, but I don't think it'll go into.
Well, we've touched on Coward, not that he wrote There'll Always Be in England, but he wrote Pride.
Yeah.
Is there any Coward in any of your comic or whimsical shows?
There actually isn't. I don't.
You surprise me.
Yeah, I don't. I thought about putting Mad Dogs and Englishmen in. I did, but I struggle with Coward. We don't see eye to eye, and I'm not sure why.
My dear, I think you're missing the point.
Yes. Yeah, we don't see eye to eye, and it's not that I don't admire him as a songwriter, because I utterly do, and I love his. Maybe it's because. Once you've heard him perform his songs,
there's almost no other way.
It's very difficult. It's not that his songs are particularly sort of masculine or feminine. They're not particularly masculine, But once you've heard his way of doing it, it seems a bit daft to do it my way.
I know what you mean.
And they suit him so well. They suit that style of singing so well. And whereas with, the sort of speech singing of Gracie Fields, something like The Biggest Aspidistra in the World, and What Do You Buy News for His Birthday, and actually a lot of her sort of more comedy songs, her speech singing, you can still sing the song exactly as it was written, and it doesn't lose anything. But his style of speech singing is so typically him and so obviously him that it just seems like there's no other way of making it sound as good. So maybe it's more that I'm just afraid to try right now. But I love Mad Dogs and Englishmen. I think it's a fantastic song and it's absolutely hilarious. But
do you know his song, There's Always Something Fishy About the French?
No.
Which is, Hinge and Bracket used to perform it, but I've never found it anywhere else. It's once again about how charming the French are. You should never trust a Frenchman because you know what he's after, essentially.
Yes.
And it's definitely a song for a woman, a knowing woman, to sing about the French. I mean, it falls into the stereotypes, as much as any of the other things we've been talking about. But it's so rarely known, I think, actually. It'd be interesting to know if you felt that you would be able to do something with that if you heard it, because other people wouldn't be able to say, "Oh, that's the Coward song that Lily's doing." They might say, "That's a fantastic song."
I would definitely steer away from his better-known numbers. I really did try with Mad Dogs and Englishmen because I think it's such a fantastic song, but I just couldn't make it. It's another one that I couldn't make work as much as I wanted it to.
Do you know he wrote some new lyrics for "I'm Old Fashioned" by Jerome
Really?
Kern and recorded it? There's a recorded version. No, because you never think of Noel Coward singing somebody else's songs, do you?
No.
But there's a few, and he did Jerome Kern's "I'm Old Fashioned," and he wrote a new verse where he makes reference to, he rewrites the original verse. One of his motifs was always cheap music, and so he stuck that into a Jerome Kern song. Now, it's interesting, you're right, I think that Coward songs can often be pickled by Coward,
Yes.
but I think that when he's singing someone else's songs, that doesn't make them Coward songs. It's quite interesting, actually, that ownership and how that happens. It must be the fact that he wrote them.
Because it's funny, Cole Porter sang a lot of his own music.
Yes.
And actually, I have quite a few recordings of him playing his own music, because I think, as a singer who's not a jazz singer, I would never describe myself as a jazz singer. It's actually, I don't know what I'd describe myself as. I'm a singer who sings old songs. But I don't sing them in a jazz style. And for a lot of the American songbook, they've been very much put into a jazz style.
Yeah, they slowly swing these days, don't they? Gently swing.
Now they do, yeah. Now, sort of during the 50s, they were all put into, sort of for the Rat Pack in Las Vegas, they were all put into these big band styles. But when you listen to their original, the way they were originally written, when sort of Cole Porter played them, they're not at all
square
jazzy.
On the beat and, yes,
they're very square, they're very correct, they're very precise, and they're actually so much more charming, because you have this charm of these really sort of, in olden days a glimpse of stalking was looked on as something shocking, but now who knows, anything goes. And they don't swing, they sort of bounce along gaily, but it's nothing sort of jazzy or sort of loose about them, and they're just so beautiful in their original form.
Well, Elizabeth Welsh she didn't introduce, she was given Love for Sale because they couldn't give it to a white actress. Do you know this?
No.
When it was originally written in the 30s, they had to bring Elizabeth Welsh in because she was black, and therefore a black person could be a prostitute. But of course it was the song that made her. But of course in the 1930s she was singing squarely on the beat. You know, it's a marvellous song, but not a light song. Obviously, it's about the sadness of not having a relationship and being paid for sex, I suppose. But, in the same show, there's a song called Solomon, which he was also given. Do you know Solomon?
I don't know Solomon, I haven't actually learnt it.
You see, I think you'd be good with Solomon, to be honest. Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, I should look it up.
Yes, it's the story of Solomon and how he has Solomon has 1,000 wives, and they all cheat on him. So he eventually arranges for them all to be killed. But it's funnier than it sounds. Once again, it's one of those Cole Porter songs with an edge to it.
I'm just making a note.
Elizabeth Welsh is the most famous person who sang it, but I'm sure you will find it. I'm not sure I do own that one, so I can't send it, but I'll make you a disc of Ronald Franco anyway. Let's get back to Gracie Fields. Have you taken your harp to a party?
I haven't taken my harp to a party. I should get a harp. I adore Gracie.
Yeah.
I could sing her music all day. I just think it's such... She's got the real comedy songs, which are gleefully wonderful.
Yeah.
And then you have the sort of the whimsical ones, which The Serenade of the Bells.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, all about something in the town of San Rosita. Lived a gay senor and senorita. And it's all about how they wanted to get married in the spring. But their parents say that the mission bell has to ring. But everyone knew the bells were broken and hadn't sounded for a long, long time. And then they go to the padre, and the mission bells begin to chime. Still the bells are broken, goes the story, but if in your heart a true love dwells, then they'll ring for you in all their glory. That's the Serenade of the Bells. And it's such a beautiful little song. It's just, it's one of those songs that you can't help but go, oh, that's just lovely.
And it contains that perfect little story as well, doesn't it? Which is so much.
And it's just, oh, it does. It's got this perfect little storytelling bit, and it just makes you smile. And then there's, when our dreams grow old, our love will always be young. Just, which actually, when I play the tune, it sounds a lot like the Plaisir d'amour, and and what was the Elvis one that sounds exactly like Plaisir d'amour? But I can't help falling in love with you. And it's actually when our dreams grow old, the tune is very, very similar to that.
And predates it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there were some beautiful, beautiful songs. And When Our Dreams Grow Old will actually go into whimsically, because although it is a very sort of sweet song, I don't think it makes me smile enough to put it into a... No. It's more of one that makes me feel a bit warm inside.
Smiles inside.
Yes, smile inside. I love her music. I think it's just... She just managed to be funny, but still incredibly likeable, and still able to sing these really heartfelt songs that people just adore. And so I think me and Gracie will have a long and happy friendship, I hope.
Well, I do hope one day you will sing I Took My Harp to a Party, and the reason it's my favourite one of hers.
Is it?
And I like it because she's playing a slightly angry person. She's gone to this party where everyone's being asked to do their bits and pieces, and of course she took her harp to a party, but nobody asked her to play. Did you know the song?
No.
I took my harp to a party, but nobody asked me to play. The others were jolly and hearty, but I wasn't feeling so gay. They might have said play us a tune we could sing, but somehow I don't think they'd notice a thing. So I took my harp to a party, and nobody asked us to play, so I took that damn thing away, and so on. And that's as much as singing as you're going to get on me, I'm
That's
afraid.
Wonderful!
But I've always liked that one, and there's various verses. But it's interesting about that one, it also makes reference to other songs that they all sing, which were popular in the 1930s, such as The King's Horses. Do you know King's Horses? Which I didn't know was the big hit of 1934.
Really?
Nobody sings that anymore. The last recording I can find is actually, believe it or not, from... Have you ever heard of Charlie and his orchestra?
Yes.
The Nazis.
Yes.
Which we've discussed in
Yes, yeah, we did.
They did a version of all the King's Horses and all the King's Men.
Because they also did a version of... was it Bugle Boy or was it In the Mood? With anti-British
Well, they always
US
do it
lyrics.
straight, and then they put in a new set of lyrics where they, it's basically as...
Because they were actually formed, was it by Himmler? They weren't formed by Hitler, they were formed by his one below. Who,
or Goering or Himmler, one of those,
they actually were formed by him.
And they're all done in that stilted British accent, which isn't quite, Lord Haw-Haw.
They're really hilarious. Apparently, Churchill was a great fan.
Was he?
He was a great fan of Charlie and his orchestra. He used to listen on the wireless to them, and he used to actually take time out of his schedule. And he found them apparently hilarious. So.
Well, even today, I mean, they're both creepy, the performances, but at the same time so inept.
The Nazis just have a way of getting stuff
wrong.
Just slightly wrong enough that it becomes weird. Yeah. I mean, obviously they got quite a lot wrong, but in terms of music and...
Their grip on the arts wasn't what it could be,
no,
was it? No,
and it's such a shame because pre-World War II, the sort of freedom of the Weimar state was a goldfish bowl of all this wonderful artistry and sort of freedom of spirit and art and music and wonderful. And then the Nazis come along and just stamp on it.
Absolutely.
Which is just such a shame because goodness knows where Germany and Europe would be if that had been allowed to sort of
If the Weimar
grow.
Republic had continued and its cultural basis and Nazism hasn't occurred, the 20th century would be an entirely different place.
Completely different place.
And Germany would ironically probably be top nation, as
Yes,
they used to say in 1066
absolutely.
and all that, certainly in Europe.
Yeah.
Just because it was such a relatively
Amazing
liberal,
and
relatively cultural
incredible
state.
performers, incredible performances, incredible, just so stylish, and I imagine an amazing place to party. If you were going to go party
Oh,
anywhere
crikey.
in the world, go party in the Weimar Republic. It must have been absolutely
Sally Bowles got it right.
incredible. Oh, absolutely.
That was the ever-lovely Lily LaScala in Conversation. And if you want to go and see Songs to Make You Smile, that's on at the Assembly at George Square. Now, as I've mentioned before, George Square is where lots and lots of musicals used to be in a dedicated venue. It's no longer a venue purely dedicated to musicals, but there are some shows still going on there, and I'm pleased to say that Lily LaScala is part of that. Her show starts at 6 o'clock in the evening and lasts an hour. Lily LaScala, Songs to Make You Smile. And Lily is spelt Lili if you're looking for her online. Go along to the Ed Fringe website, that's edfringe.com. And of course, there'll be lots of links on the MusicalTalk website to other websites which are relevant, including Lily's own. Well, from Lily LaScala, who last year sang War Notes, songs from the Second World War, to a song which is also an oblique look at the Second World War, except that it isn't. It's called Hitler the Musical, and of course with a title like that, it was making waves in the press before it even got to Edinburgh. It's a curious show, it's a comedy musical, and what's it about? Well, apart from being about Hitler, it's about, well, perhaps it's better if I let the people behind the show tell us all about it. And they very kindly said that we can hear a couple of songs, so first we'll hear a song from Hitler the Musical, then we'll hear from the people behind it, and then we'll hear another song. And I think you'll find their approach to writing musicals is very unusual.
My mummy says I'm just a late bloomer, that one day I'll need a personal groomer, that my hair will grow to be so long I'll need to wear a turban. My arm will heal and I'll look grand, I'll be able to wank with both hands. But at the mo, I've got a bit of a claw, and I don't look very urban. I'm not normally a moaner, just get on with my lot, make do with what I got. But recently I've been a loner, and I just don't think it's very fair. I've got a gammy arm and I'm hairless all over. My childhood friends have deserted me. I don't like being 17 and having a comb over. It is not a pretty sight to see. I don't have much luck with the women. My self-confidence is gone. But pretty soon I'll be swimming. Not as an ugly duckling but a swan. I've got a gammy arm and I'm hairless all over. But it won't be for eternity. Cause one day I'll be big and hairy and have two normal arms. And we will form an army, and maybe grow a moustache, and we can rule the world, and I can just be free. One day I will just be me.
I'm Isabel Page, and I'm with Hitler the Musical, and I am a performer in it, and also sort of general dog's body and admin person. That anything that needs doing.
Unterführer.
Yeah, precisely, yeah. Unterführer.
And I am David Kingsmill, and I am Hitler the Musical's musical arranger and musical director.
Now, there's a very obvious first question, and you're going to get this a lot from now until you've finished your run. Hitler the Musical, why?
Well,
you may confer.
Our premise is that Hitler has come to us as a company and said, I want to put on a show about myself because I've been getting a lot of bad press, and I want to show the world the real me, basically. So it's not something that's been done. I mean, it's been done a little bit by the producers, but it's not been done in full, and we feel that's what we've got to bring to Edinburgh this year, because it has to be done. Well, Hitler has told us that if it isn't done, we're going to have serious backlashes. So
My question, I just want to explore this a bit, because actually this is a very interesting point, because when I saw you in the Fringe catalogue, I thought, I like the logo. Great image, by the way. I thought that looks interesting. That's clearly a leg pull. Mm-hmm. But has anyone yet said, this is an appalling taste? How can you possibly make fun of something like this? Or, forgive me, are you neo-Nazis and meaning this sincerely? Now, I don't believe from the blurb I've read that could possibly be the interpretation. But people are funny, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you do get the odd one. But usually, if that happens, if someone's looking a little bit kind of put out by it, I'll sort of tell them the most offensive joke in the show and then see where we go from there, because the thing is, the further you go with it, the more obvious it is that it's silly. I mean, like Life of Brian, for example, that's
you seem relatively unpunched, so that's looking promising.
Yeah we'll see how we go.
So who created the part? What's the gestation? How did this come about?
Well, it's a funny story.
It better be.
We try once in a while.
Well, I don't know, it's not that funny actually. Really. Basically, because we were in our final year of college and
where were you studying?
Trinity College of Music. It's now Trinity Laban Conservatoire of Music and Dance. And our final year involved a lot of devising. So we'd already devised one musical as a group and we really enjoyed it. And the thing is, because once you've done that once, you know what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are, you know how you work as a group. So, and then we had a little exercise in a class once where we had to devise a mini musical, get into groups of 4 and just come up with 20 minutes worth to show next week. So it was me and 3 other girls just thought it'd be hilarious to do Hitler the Musical. It'd just been in our flat once, we just thought, wouldn't it be funny? And we'd started writing lyrics just for the fun, and then so for this task at school we used it, and then it just grew from there really. And then David came along because he wasn't in the same year as us, but was ideal for he just got it straight away. So
yeah, one of those bits of pure fluke really. I think I can't remember, somebody came to me and said, would you write, can you arrange the music for this particular song that was wanting to be previewed or sort of tested, wasn't it, at the fundraiser concert? And somebody said, can you write some music for this and try and just sort of flesh it out a little bit? And it just kind of worked. And we have somewhere hidden in the depths of somebody's computer a hysterical recording of 3 people in a room spending most of the time laughing rather than actually writing any music. And it just kind of, I don't know, it gelled rather well.
Yeah.
And that was much like the secret archive of the Third Reich.
Yeah, strangely like that.
Funny that you should say that.
We do have a couple of mini Hitlers in our group as well. Not going to name any names, but
who is this mini Hitler of whom you speak? Yes. So you've had the idea, and it sounds like almost one of those inspired in the pub kind of things, although not actually in the pub. But sometimes you get a kernel of an idea, and then you can take it from there. You've devised a story.
Yes.
How does one bring music into something like that? Were you composing? Were you, David, asked to write new songs? You came in as an arranger first.
Yes, my sort of compositional involvement is very slim. I've written the opening number for the show, which I wrote the lyrics for as well. And
might we vouchsafe the title?
At the moment, it's opening number.
Okay, fine. That's what it says on the tin, doesn't it?
I'm not one of the. I'm getting a bit bored of naming all of my songs after lyrics in the song, and I've been trying to come up with something else, and I'm just failing. So it's just opening number until I get some flash of inspiration. And I've written a couple of bits of sort of underscoring or choreograph music, but I haven't actually really done much composing. It's been mostly arranging. I've had a melody and some lyrics brought to me, and I've made something of it.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So, what is the creative basis of the music thing?
It's been really a group effort because
a collective, a composing collective.
Well, kind of. I mean, because we had this idea to begin with, and we had 4 songs that we'd sort of written, and then we said when we were thinking about developing into a full-length musical, we sort of said, well, wouldn't this be great, this song title and this song title? And then different people kind of picked out different ones and said, I really fancy having a go at that. So they would go away with maybe 3 others in the group, and they'd come up with some lyrics, and then they'd give it to someone who was good at writing a melody. We just it's really just passing it around, because none of us in the group, apart from David, are composers at all. But as putting our heads together, we could get much better results. And
I mean, that's quite interesting. I'm not sure I've ever heard of anything quite like that, which makes me all the more interested in hearing and seeing it. I suppose I then have to ask is if it's all being created by different groups who are inspired about different aspects of it and then forged together, and under your sort of auspices as musical director, David, does it have an integrated feel? Would someone say, if they didn't know, this is by one or two people, or does it all sound disparate?
You've done a lot. Just talking to David, has done a lot to bring it together, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's changed so much since it started, and everything's fed into each other, and David has sort of made it more of a unity, I think.
It's one of the things I've tried to do is because obviously everybody's been working on an individual song or a couple of songs, and I'm trying to see it more as an overall, here's our show. And I won't truly know how successful I've been at that until we preview it. But there are little quotes here and there where, the opening number quotes several songs anyway, but here and there are little bits where something comes back and you recognise a theme that's been in somewhere else.
All right, so you have been able to almost post-integrate.
Yeah.
So in a way, I'm actually going to pay you a compliment and say it sounds like you're giving me the story of Jonathan Tunick, who's the great orchestrator of the Sondheims, who I think is responsible for the sound of Sondheim in a way that perhaps Sondheim isn't. So perhaps
that's
sound...
extremely kind and perhaps praise slightly above my station at this point in time, but thank you anyway.
Are you the Jonathan Tunick of Adolf Hitler?
I'm trying to be. I'll let the audience judge whether I'm successful or not. But
he better be, or Adolf will have something to say about it.
Yes.
Here's a question then. So your sort of collaborative group has been creating the songs and developing the plot. How do you separate the wheat from the chaff? In terms of everything, because you will come up with more. I'm going to say it's like Monty Python in a sense. That's a collaborative effort, but some of that's not very good.
Very good.
Well, yeah, we're sort of doing that at the moment. We've got our first preview next Monday, and we have got too much at the moment, so we're just fishing out what's good and what's bad. And also, we will do more of that after the previews, and we've got audience feedback.
Of course.
So we can. It will still be much too long at previews. So.
It's one of the things that we're trying to make sure that we do is if you can preview with too much, you've got room to take stuff back out again.
You've got slack, haven't you?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're not desperately gap-filling at the last minute?
No.
How long is it at the moment, and how long ought it to be?
Well, when it goes to Edinburgh, it'll be an hour. I don't know.
A fairly standard Edinburgh length.
Yeah. At the moment, I think we've got at least an hour and a half, possibly more. There's a lot to do still. We even with songs that we'll keep, we'll probably cut them so that we just get the point of the song and everything. So
I think quite a lot of stuff has been written in a I don't want to say a modular way, that's the wrong word. I'm not sure what the word is I want, but we can take a verse out without too much difficulty and rearrange words. We've already been doing this with a couple of songs, actually. Rearrange a couple of verses into one and take one out.
A Meccano musical.
Yeah.
You can bolt and unbolt.
Yes, after a fashion,
Yes.
We're doing mostly bolting for the moment, but we're prepared to unbolt when it becomes necessary.
Well, it's good to have that ability. I'm going to ask, as a piece, now you've spoken about the creative aspects of it, and I think that's really quite remarkable, I have to say. I'm still quite stunned at the idea that might generate something worth listening to, and I'm looking forward to being able to say whether it does or not. No, I'm sure I shall. But tell me about the script development. How do you cast Hitler? And forgive me, are you all you said there were 4 of you and you were all women?
Yeah, well, that's right.
Is Hitler a woman?
In the show, Hitler is played by everyone at different points, and David's at the piano, and then we've only got one other male in the cast who does not play Hitler at any time, so that was that is a gag in itself that comes up because obviously Ben, our other male, plays all the female parts.
I'm enjoying this.
So he's Ava Brown, obviously, and a couple of other female parts. But yeah, so it progresses through Hitler's life, really. I play Hitler at age 17.
The painting, creative one?
Well, almost. He hasn't quite reached that. That's the Hitler after me, or 2 Hitlers after me. I'm teenage
Hitler
Hitler.
Mark II, yeah.
I'm gammy-armed and hairless all over and wishing I had a moustache. And so I sort of do my little bit that's, lasts, 5 minutes or something, and then we have a ceremonial moustache changeover, and the next person becomes Hitler, and that's homeless Hitler, so he sings about how sad it is to be homeless, and then the next one is the creative one who doesn't get into art school, and it kind of develops from there. And towards the end of the show we have a song, it's a country and western number called
Settle for Being a Führer.
I wanted everything but I'll settle for being a Führer. It's quite catchy, and then it goes from there, really. So yeah, it's kind of the...
What would you say was the tone, and what have you been inspired by?
I think the tone is a little bit Monty Python, a little bit Acorn Antiques. I think we're very aware of how we want it to look ad hoc. We want to look like a bunch of actors who Hitler is... Because we've got a narrator Hitler as well that's the same person the whole way through, and that's the real Hitler. So the rest of us are just sort of the conceit is that he's making us all play him at different times.
Your facsimile Furers, and he's...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's the real deal. And the idea is that we are all in the pay of him and all just sort of trying to do Edinburgh, basically. So, yeah. And what was I talking about?
The tone of the show.
Yes. Tone of the show, yeah. What do you think?
Which I think... I think one of the things with this show is that the majority of the information that we present in it is either factual or only slightly removed from the truth, as far as we can establish. Obviously, there are things about Hitler's life that people isn't recorded, and we've had to make certain assumptions, and there are a few bits that aren't there. But the majority of the show is pretty factual, but portrayed with tongue firmly in cheek.
Yes.
And it's. I think there's probably all of about 2.5 minutes of serious time in this, and the rest of it is all hopefully going to be very funny.
It would have to be, really, though, wouldn't it? Because otherwise it would probably be unbearable. But how does one deal with the war? I mean, presumably, and I'm guessing. I mean this rudely, but I suspect the level at which you're working is going to be the higher political level of success and failure rather than some of the grimmer aspects.
Well, it was quite far down...
That question you say.
Of course. Yeah, I understand. I mean, it was quite far down the road that anyone raised the issue that we'd missed out the whole of the Second World War. That was quite far down the line.
Well,
but
in fairness, it didn't help his reputation, did it?
So, no, it didn't.
No, absolutely not.
No, I mean, but what we thought is that, given that it is Hitler who's taken this show to Edinburgh, he probably wouldn't want to dwell on that very much.
No.
Because, there's other great things about him, like he invented the Volkswagen. He also invented the blow-up doll, interestingly enough. We don't really go into that, which we should.
Sorry,
but anyway.
I'm guessing this is one of those flights of fancy, or is it actually understood?
That's true.
That's believed to be true.
Yeah,
he invented the blow-up doll.
Yes.
Because he didn't want his troops mixing with the foreign females, so it was considered expedient.
So did you pack your rubber meant something entirely different?
Yeah, it really did.
Oh, I'd not thought of it in quite that term. That's slightly disturbing.
It's presumably also why bayonet warfare was so little used in the Second World War.
Oh dear.
I'll stop there.
Dear, oh dear.
Anywho, so, oh my God, I've forgotten what I was saying again.
Splendid, my work here is done.
World War II, that's right.
Yes.
So that little issue.
Small.
Yeah.
Little, yes.
So quite near the end of the show, we've got this little section that basically sort of just flags up the issue that we haven't covered, the Second World War, and it's kind of a skip into the present. Everything else has been Hitler telling his story in chronological order, but that moment is a skip into the present, and our narrator Hitler, who is in the Fringe in 2011, has a bit of a breakdown, and he calls his therapist in, and he can't remember what's happened between 1939 and 1945, and then the therapist just encourages him to relax, and then we go into this dream sequence of, it's basically two showgirls come along, one of them singing Invasion of Poland in a very showgirl style, the other one singing World War II, the third one sings Holocaust, which is potentially very offensive, but the person who sings it is our token Jew in the show, which we introduced very early on with a song called Token Jew. And the gag is she comes on at various points in the show and does something that's wrong, and we all break out of character and say, you can't do that, that's offensive. Because it's her that's doing it, it's kind of okay.
How very metaphysical.
Yeah.
Meta-theatre.
Yes. Absolutely.
So that's how we've got round it. Also, we've got a giant blow-up hammer that we hit her with sometimes, which is...
So it seems to me that you are very much in the territory of taking it so far removed from any form of reality. It just couldn't be.
That's the general idea. I think that the one thing that we definitely want to make sure nobody comes away thinking is that we are in any way neo-Nazi or supportive of anything. The way that we display the piece, we hope, is sufficient to just go, we're just pointing the finger and laughing, really, which is precisely what we're trying to do.
Quite right, too.
Our motto is that laughter is the ultimate victory. So,
we've beaten him. Hopefully, we cross our fingers to say that we have beaten him.
Because he would hate it if he knew that we were doing this.
Oh well, yes. Mark, he'd be quite an old man, I think.
He would.
This is true,
yes.
But he'd still be mighty annoyed.
Yes.
So, taking us back to the musical score, how many songs have you got in your hour, would you say?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think we're in something in the region of about 14 at the moment, of varying lengths. There are a couple that are sort of longer sequences, if you like, which you almost have a 6-minute through-sung segment.
Yes.
And there are some that are... We've got a couple of songs in it. I think Gammy's only about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Gammy Arm and Hellas All Over.
Yeah.
We've just kind of... A lot of them have rather long titles, so we've shortened them for our own purposes. But yeah, so I think there's a fair bit of variety in there, but I think it gives us the opportunity to kind of explore different elements in different styles, whilst, hopefully, if I've done my job right, kind of keeping it pinned together.
One of the a reviewer friend of mine has already said on Twitter, I've just heard there's Hitler the Musical, full stop, only in Edinburgh, is his quotation. So perhaps there is an element to that, but what would you like ideally to come out of your experiences with Hitler the Musical?
Well, if nothing else, I think we'll all learn a lot. I've learned a lot, so much already.
Yes.
So even if it's a complete flop, I'm sure we will have learned a lot. But hopefully, we all hope it won't be a flop. We all hope that we'll have rave reviews and people who give us money to make it better. But obviously,
you might
everyone
have to
hopes
wait a while for the feature film, though.
I guess so. I don't know.
And how can people see it?
Well, we're on at Griffon 1 in the Point Hotel, which is venue 109, if memory serves correctly, on Bread Street. And we're on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon from the 8th to the 20th of August, excluding the 14th. And tickets purchased through the box office of the venue or through the Fringe box office, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite easy to come by it.
Yes.
And so therefore the answer must be come by it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Final words then. What is your, and this is a question for both of you, one each please, your favourite memory element thing about it?
Oh.
And I'll edit out any pause.
You first.
So you sound immediately active.
Oh yes, you first while I think.
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to think of my favourite line from it or something. Okay, I think my favourite line is in the Country and Western number, the Hitler sings, I could have been everything, but I settled for being a Führer. I'm not all that opinionated, so I'll never be a juror. That's probably my favourite.
Good twang, by the way, very nice.
Thank you.
I think for me, I don't think it's so much a moment of the show yet, although don't get me wrong, I think there are many wonderful moments in the show, but I think it's the moments in rehearsal where something that we're doing suddenly works, and someone goes, let's try this, and there's 13 people in the room who suddenly burst out laughing. There are points where piano accompaniment disappears from songs because I just can't keep playing. Because someone's just suddenly done something and it's hysterical. And there's been a few of those, or just working on a song. As I was saying earlier, there's working on the final song of the show, there's a 20-minute recording which has about 5 minutes of music and 15 minutes of laughter. And it's just... I think that's a wonderful feeling for a group to be providing something to each other like that. It's a wonderful camaraderie about it.
Yeah.
So if the audience has half the fun that you appear to be having in the creative process,
then hopefully they'll be having a good time. Yeah.
Splendid, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you very much indeed to you both. I wish you very great success, and I look forward to coming to see Hitler the Musical up at the Point Theatre in Edinburgh.
Look forward to seeing you there.
We do.
Like blossom to a double cherry sundae, my SS to his SA. Rome, Ernst Rome, and I used to be so tight, but now I cannot sleep at night, 'cause Rome has become too proud. This threat to me won't be allowed. And in this world of uncertainty, my followers all look to me to stop and compromise the efficiency. This is why I say sacking is not an option. Though you may want to give your notice now, your resignation may give you comfort somehow. You better sleep with one eye open. Sacking is not an option. 'Cause I'm bringing the essay, but bringing the essay, but bringing the essay down. Sometimes a business just needs to downsize. A decent dictator to create the legacy. Think of it in terms of a mustache franchise, and I'm the dude with the secret recipe. They say to make an omelet, you have to break some legs. Why do you sack your stuff when you can stand the
essay down. Sing it with me. Bringing the essay, bringing the essay, bringing the essay down. We're bringing the essay, bringing the essay, we're bringing the essay down. Bringing the essay down.
Well, there we have it. Hitler the musical. Who'd have thought? Well, as I had cause to say during the interview, only in Edinburgh. How can you see it? That's a tremendously good question. Well, it's on at the Griffin Venues. Now, the Griffin Venues is a new venue in the Point Hotel, which is in Bread Street in Edinburgh, one of my favourites because, as I've said before, it does an excellent dinner. It's a very good restaurant. In fact, it's my favourite restaurant in Edinburgh. But they've also got a venue, and this year it's being used for a lot of shows, a number of which are musical shows. And one of those is Hitler, the musical. And that performs at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and lasts 1 hour. Once again, go along to the Ed Fringe website. That's the Edinburgh Fringe overarching booking website. It has information on all the shows this year. But also Griffin Venues itself has a website, and that's Griffin, Gryphon. And my thanks go to the cast for letting us hear some of the music. Well, what next? What next? It's time for Fresher the Musical. Now, Fresher the Musical was one of the big hits last year. It was genuinely one of those shows which came from nowhere and was immediately brilliant, immediately popular, and sold out every day. The lovely Mark Aspinall I spoke to last year, and I'm hoping to catch him again in Edinburgh this year. But there were a couple of previews for the 2011 version, which were held in London. I went to see one of those with Tim Saywood, and here's our review.
How could I be so retarded with this secret I have guarded? I could slap myself. And what makes it more appalling is that I'm to blame for falling for his trap myself. And the terrifying notion he could tell them any moment makes me crap myself. But what really started hurting is that I'm not even certain who I am.
Nice to see you, Tim. We've just been to see Fresher the musical, a most unusual Edinburgh musical in the sense that we saw it in London in its previews for its second year. I saw it last year in Edinburgh. It's by Mark Aspinall. Yep. This was your first time seeing it. So, well, actually, briefly, describe what it's about.
So, what we have is the story of a group of freshers in their first week, and it seems to mostly happen in that sort of first week or first few weeks of...
Sort of deal off by fire very quickly.
Yes, it is, of what is conventionally called Freshers' Week, even when I was at university, even all those many years ago. Yeah, we sort of see them living, loving... arguing, deciding whether to come out. Deciding whether to go in, yes.
Yes, and sex, yes.
And definitely lots of sex, and well, actually not very much sex, because
lots of sex spoken.
A lot of talking about sex. Actually, no successful sex actually happens during the entire show. Which is, I don't mean on stage, off stage either.
Within the confines of a narrative, yes, absolutely. I think that's absolutely true, and therefore, presumably, like quite a lot of people's first week. I mean, it is actually about timidity and reinvention in a place where everyone's new in an environment and free from the shackles of home.
Yes, and they're all desperate to get laid.
Yes, and drunk.
Yes.
One of which often begets the other.
It does.
But not in this.
No, not in this case.
But, so that's the plot in general.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to make an observation because when we saw it in the previews in London, the audience was extremely young. I would have said they were in their teens and early 20s for the most part.
Yep.
Whereas when I saw it in Edinburgh last year, it was quite noticeable. I thought the demographic of the audience was much older. And last year's resonance, it seemed, for me as well, was that it was something nostalgic, something that we all recognised in ourselves when we were at university, either what we had done or we had seen other people doing as well, that jostling for position in a new social environment, actually.
Yes.
With added free song of booze and sex.
Exactly. I have to say that my Freshers' Week was nothing like what was shown. There's a sort of slightly Boris Johnson-y character who's a little bit sort of...
Rupert Pye.
Yes, Rupert Pye, who's a little bit immature and a little bit deluded. And I'm afraid he was the one that was closest to how I was in my Freshers' Week.
Really?
Except, yes, I would say so. Quite socially awkward, but also... but of course, I spent my Freshers' Week not having anything to do with anybody at all. So, yeah. It was...
I'll ask you more about that.
That's my personal tragedy, obviously, nothing to do with the show. But, so I kind of found myself identifying with him. And he does get a lot of the best lines as well. I mean, because he's sort of so unaware, he does get a lot of he fails to understand what all the others are going on about. He doesn't understand when people drop hints that he needs to get out of the room because the two people are about to try and have sex, and
he's
and he gets a lot of those sort of clueless lines, you know.
Well, it's quite funny actually overall, isn't it? Although it's trying to tell some stories which resonate with the human condition,
Yes.
it is essentially actually a comedy, I think.
Yes, I mean basically it's about the one-liners, yes, and it's about the sort of that group of people in that one situation, and making fun out of that.
And it trades on embarrassment and social awkwardness as well.
Strongly, yes.
Which is, once again, for me, that nostalgic thing rather than an
Yeah.
aspirational thing about people.
And
People who hadn't been there might be put off going to university, I'd have thought.
You've got the sort of jock character who's sort of amazingly homophobic, and yes, Tuck, who's
but has a softer side.
he does have a softer side, which we get to find out sort of later on. You've got
Ali, the other posh one, she's a posh woman in this case, and
Yes.
absolutely self-absorbed and uses sex
and
and
convinced
desire
that she's
as a
absolutely it. Yes, exactly. And you've got Basil, who's played by James Darch, and he's the not quite sure of himself character.
He's also quite nerdy.
He's a little bit nerdy as well, yes.
And I have to say, I think that was shown right at the beginning, before they've even spoken, because they all come on clutching boxes with their names on, which contain
Yes.
their belongings. And his was the only one that was printed off on a label.
Tremendously strong echoes, certainly of the American musical generically at this point, and then certainly of Avenue Q, I would say, as well. All that sort of nice 5-part harmony stuff.
And there's a touch, funnily enough, of the sense of Friends about it as well.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. But
except I like some of these characters less than... Actually, no, hang on.
Well, are you supposed to like the characters, really?
Are you supposed to like the characters?
Or sympathise and empathise?
I think it helps if you do. I mean,
then?
the Boris Johnson-y one, sorry, I keep forgetting his character
Pye.
name. Rupert Pye. Character is endearing without necessarily being particularly likeable. And of course, the other sort of the sort of control character, Hayley, it is, I think, who's played by Rebecca Hines, is the more normal sort of girl, basically, and she in a way is the sort of centre of you know, the person you can connect to, because she's not like up herself and she's not fronting all the time, and she's kind of got, you know, she has genuine emotions, and she's a little bit vulnerable and scared, and
is a real person.
And she's a person, but she's not wholly central to the whole thing. But she certainly is.
She's a catalyst, I think.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
She goes around bringing out other people's.
She's the more likeable of the characters, and in a way, yes, it's the attention, however, inevitably is drawn to the slightly less likeable ones, because they're the ones making the big noise.
Yes, there's a certain amount of there's only one alpha male per se, but there's quite a lot of personalities jostling up and friction.
Yes, and there's a lot of sort of twistiness to the whole thing, in the sense that you never quite know who's going to get off with who. I'm not sure they set up quite well enough for you to care either, or to particularly be rooting, as it were, for a particular pairing to come about.
But it did confound their expectations in one or two senses, because...
Well, I don't know about it. Confounded yours, but...
Well, right, let me offer you hard fact here, boy. You told me that you were expecting...
That's true, I did, yes.
Let's be honest.
The homophobic one to turn out to be in some way gay or open to...
You were expecting two characters to kiss.
Homosexual activity, yeah. Who didn't, that's true.
So in that sense, at least enough. And when I saw it last year, which was the first time for me, I expected Tuck to get off actually with the highly
the
desired,
more glamorous,
the self-loving
superficial
woman,
girl, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And he
who's all into designer labels and stuff, yeah. But in a way, it would have been absolutely tragic if he had, because that would have been far too obvious. And
indeed.
He had to fall in love with a nice girl, or someone had to.
It's not. I mean, I think when we say it confounds expectations, that's not because of any sophisticatedness, but it does, in an Edinburgh sense, skirt away from the
What
obvious.
disappointed me a little bit was that it didn't go through all of the possible permutations before settling on a final surprising set of them, but which inevitably made sort of sense from the beginning. So in a way, it didn't quite work as hard as it could have done in the plot stakes. It sort of had some plottiness to it, but it could have become very plotty with like all of the different relationships. Almost anybody could have, you could have twisted the plot such that anybody could have slept with each other at any point, and maybe you could have. That's what sort of Freshers' Week is all about, isn't it? It's about sudden change of emotion. Like on the Monday, you sort of meet someone at the disco. So the next thing you know, you've slept with them on the Tuesday, and that's it. You're actually not friends anymore by the Thursday, and like you're actually going out with someone else entirely. As I say, none of this happened in my Freshers' Week, but
not me. Is it?
But I understand it does to other people, and that's what I was hoping to vicariously experience through this show.
But it is essentially a musical.
Yeah.
It has 9 songs by Mark Aspinall, words and lyrics.
Yes. Lovely score.
Yes, I agree, actually.
Very nice, very confident, very American, very much in the sort of Avenue Q, and indeed the sort of tradition that follows immediately before Avenue Q, of the slightly rocky, lots of arpeggios in the right hand, lots of thumping around in the left hand type of score, of which you do hear rather a lot, if I must be a bit mean about it, but certainly done with a tremendous confidence, done with aplomb, and the songs are very well structured and felt like musical theatre songs in the sense that they launched very well out of the situations, and characters sort of didn't abandon the true voice of their character while they were singing them. It wasn't just emoting like I've seen in some musicals of that kind. So points for that, I thought.
I quite like the fact that some of the songs actually took on their subjects obliquely. So it wasn't just I love and I feel. It was all...
He's a smelly old what's-it, and but I still somehow find some affection here, and he brings out something nice in me.
But this, hang on, isn't that As Long As He Needs Me from Oliver?
Oh, yeah.
He's a smelly old not...
He's a smelly old what's-it. I think it was something to do with his shorts that someone could have died in, or something like that, from a charity shop. It was in the middle of one of the songs, the duets between Tuck and Hayley.
Who in a way become the central characters, don't they, really?
They become them, yes. If one were to sort of look for the element of this that's weakest, and in a way that I have to say is quite typical of this kind of Edinburgh show, it would be book, and particularly the structure of the book, because the dialogue was very nice and very funny in a lot of cases.
Also, if I may say, I think that the character that's most underwritten is the one who's got the speech mark's biggest revelation. Which is actually
the gay character, yes, exactly.
Yeah,
which is not a big surprise because we know this from quite early on.
Because we're told that he's a nerd, and we're told that he's gay, and then he comes out. But actually, he's not given a great deal more to do.
He doesn't really have a story apart from that, and in a way, it does feel he's the first to sing. Certainly, he steps out of the action at one point to remind us of his opening song as well, which kind of implies that we're supposed to be seeing everything sort of more from his perspective than the other characters. But he doesn't really quite achieve centrality, and I think you're right. I think it's because he's a sort of cipher, really, for the whole coming out story, and in a way his story isn't central to the whole piece, and it's a shame because I think well, in a way it's not a shame because there's not much there to begin with. In a way you do naturally focus on the characters who are a bit more larger than life, but yeah.
What did you think of the lyrics?
The lyrics were pretty smart, I thought. I mean, nothing jarred in the lyrics and nothing sort of stood out, and as I say, I felt that they were written pretty convincingly in the character voices.
Well, I like the song That's a Sign, which is a little bit of a patter song more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
It's a way of spotting whether a man or a woman fancies you. And succeeds in being funny and also quite clever. Not in ideas, but clever in verbal dexterity.
One of the things they do, and again, this applies to a lot of these sort of ensemble type of musicals that, again, are very popular for quite young writers and going to Edinburgh, is that they acted like company numbers. In other words, you could believe that the experience that they were talking about in the song was authentically being shared by all 5 characters. In other words, their uncertainty at coming in, or their desire to get laid, or all of those things. So it really did work on that level. There wasn't that sort of contrivance of everybody suddenly sings in chorus, and yet you go, well, why is that person in the chorus? Because they should be singing the opposite to what everybody else is singing, or whatever the plot would have suggested. But actually, it didn't run into that difficulty.
The orchestrations I liked as well. I mean, what's interesting was we were told at the beginning of this version that they'd revamped it slightly from last year.
Yeah.
Now, last year my recollection was that it was very rocky, and it's still a rock-based musical, but it seemed a bit more sort of. I'm probably not using these terms correctly, being who I am, but I would say more funky, in that sense that there was almost a kind of 70s sound to it.
Oh, okay, yes.
In some areas, which actually I found much more pleasing to the ear.
Right, but on the other hand, it's really not set in the 70s in any recognisable way. I mean, where it was as a score was in the sort of the piano rock musical personality of pretty much most American musicals of the 90s and late 80s and through to now, really.
But not in that order, presumably.
Yes, that's right. Yes, they did it slightly differently, but you get the general gist. And it was in that musical world. So in a way, the only slightly odd thing about it was that this was a very British. Well, it wasn't very British, but it was a British musical, absolutely clearly, and the characters were unmistakably British and couldn't easily be transposed to another context.
Could you? Oh, that's interesting. Would you not say so? Could that not have been done with an American cast?
It could have been. No, you're right. It could have been rewritten for an American cast. But I mean, the specific characteristics, the things they talked about, the cultural references and stuff, implied British. But yes, with the style of music that's absolutely A, recognised to be musical theatre, but B, generally thought of as American.
But isn't that because that's now what people recognise as musical theatre in London? Certainly young musical theatre.
Yeah, I mean, for the last sort of 20 years, I suppose, yes. If not the last 5, as the usual.
Incorporating, as we say, the 90s, 80s and the current period.
Yes, that's right, yes. In that specific
order.
order.
As recently been reordered.
Yeah.
I have to say, however, I still find the show... I was very pleased to find out that I still enjoyed it a great deal this year. I found it funny. I'll tell you what I really found. I found it tuneful and I found it exuberant. I really like the
Yes.
enthusiasm, and in fact, I think it's almost that enthusiasm
It was
that
very-
carries you through
Yes.
where it is weaker. And
Yes.
it has its weak moments, but
But yes, it does have. It was very well sung. Some very strong voices in there, particularly Natasha J. Barnes, who plays Ali. Has a really good,
barnstorming.
a bit of a 11 o'clock sort of number where she's. I think it's the one that's called "You're All the Same," but where she talks about why people don't fancy her basically, and despite being stunning, and that is a very very strong song and very nice piece of musical writing certainly.
So, Tim, just to conclude then, if I asked you final words, tone and final thoughts.
Very confident score, very pleasing musically, a little weak in the book, certainly very slight in the book, and probably could do with a third year to work that through, as we do all at university, and some really good performances and some very assured production.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. You're listening to Musical Talk at the Edinburgh Fringe. Well, there you have it. Fresher, the musical, as reviewed by Tim Saywood. Well, I made that a 5-star show last year, and although I accept Tim's argument that the plot is a little bit linear and could do with a little bit of development, for an Edinburgh show which only has an hour and 15 minutes at most to get through what it's got to get through, I think it works very well, and I think the score is an absolute jewel. You might have said an American rock-style score isn't the kind of thing that's going to bring me in, but this one won me over completely. I think it's lovely. And so I'm very happy to reconfirm Musical Talk's 5-star status for this show. It's an exuberant blast. Well, we're very nearly at the end of this week's episode of Musical Talk, so do join me again in the next few weeks to hear more about Edinburgh, and I'll be talking to lots and lots of people about lots and lots of different aspects of all the shows up in Edinburgh. Or at least a great many of them. I think doing all of them means that Musical Talk will be on air daily for the rest of our natural lives. But we'll certainly be tackling quite a few until I'm booked into some kind of sanatorium. But we're going to finish the show today with a brief look and taster for the improvised musical. Now, as you know from previous Musical Talks, there are lots of improvised musicals up in Edinburgh. Showstoppers is one, Baby Wants Candy is another, but the third is No Shoes. And that third doesn't mean it's third in status or third in ranking, because they're very professional. And what's delightful about all three of those companies, and there's more than that, by the way, is that they all do it in totally different ways. Now, No Shoes are a very accomplished group of young improvisers and actors, and they really are able to bring things together. And what you get from them is a real sense that they're enjoying it too. It's very, very catchy. It's very, very enthusiastic. And I have to say, it engages immediately. So do go along to see No Shoes' improvised musical at C. Their venue is C, which is in Chambers Street, which has always been one of the core venues for musical theatre. And to finish the show today, we're going to hear a song, one of the first songs they performed at this year's Edinburgh Festival already. They've kindly let us play it. And it's from the Performed Only Once musical, because that's the nature of improvised musicals, 7 Lampposts. All details about these shows and plenty of others are on the Musical Talk website. And don't forget to go along to edfringe.co.com for further booking details. And if you see me in Edinburgh, do come along and say hello. But today, that's that. See you soon. And so let's finish with that introductory song from 7 Lampposts, introduced by the lovely Michael Slater, who opens by briefly recapping what the audience has insisted the musical must be about. So it gives you just a sense of how that show developed. But if you've missed it, you've missed it. Goodbye.
So, starting in a prison, including the song Flight of the Pigeon, we now present to you 7 Lampposts.
I knew nighttime stars. You'll be stuck there for so long because you've done wrong. All of you criminals, and to pay for your crimes, you must all do time behind bars. Behind bars. I've been stuck here for 15 years, and they won't let me go. Been stuck here for 15 years, and I've lost touch with everyone I know. Stuck behind bars.
I'm not guilty, what can they see? I just only killed all of my family. Because I'm crazy. And I'm stuck behind bars. I'll never
Down. You will never, never be getting out. You're stuck behind bars. You'll never see. Stay stuck behind
This episode of Musical Talk produced and edited by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2011. Except for the songs where the copyright persists with the original creators. And our thanks go to them for letting us play some of their music. And now for some Edinburgh Fringe out talks. It's a real melting pot. Now, we are actually now recording. I'm going to... probably actually going to ask you to understand there if that's okay, because the table bounces. You get these very odd things. I may also ask you, just as well you're working together, because I'm going to ask you to get a little closer.
We can manage that, I'm sure.
Quite right. Changing rooms.
Sorry, I'm David.
So what I was going to do, if that's okay, is this is probably about right. So it's I've got a little screen on here which has got all the levels on it. So I'm afraid you'll just see the top of my revoltingly board here.
No, that's quite. I do this for a job. So
yes. Well, you must know it backwards, I'm afraid. I'm going to ask you for a level first, if that's okay.
Okay.
Just speak conversationally.
Okay, so Hitler the Musical is on at the Point Hotel in Edinburgh from the 8th to the 20th at 3 p.m.
And somehow I've managed to get myself involved in it, and I'm going to be there as well.
And then we'll go into the conversation. Is that all right?
For me, this is just for Hitler.
We'll
do this again.
Yeah, that's right. We'll pretend.
Excellent.
Don't worry, I'll be asking your name a lot this evening.
No, that's fine. Sorry, who are you?
Very good question. Yes, Thos couldn't make it, so he sent some bald idiot along.
Right.
Yes, fine. I hope you wouldn't notice.
Right, so, well, I would say,
Is that all right for you chaps?
Absolutely.
Anything there that you'd rather take out, or you want to add in, or
That's
anything we've
fine.
fundamentally forgotten?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
That was 21 minutes. Is that all right? That's about right. That's
Yeah.
almost perfect in terms of, slot inability. If that's all right.
Yeah.
I'll turn it off. Do you want to give me a level?
Peanuts. Peanuts.
No need for that kind of language. Right, shall I give you a few seconds for the peanuts to go down? Look at those
Peanut ingestion happening now. Nom, nom, nom.
throbbing peanuts. Well, this is going to be interesting on the outtakes.
Nom, nom, nom. I put a lovely outtake on the end of the Bruce Wall episode.
Oh, really?
I'm assuming nobody made that far, so...
I now make a point of doing so.
That's actually Darren doing a funny voice.
Oh, is it?
It's not really an outtake, actually. It's just a...
It's an
really.
added value.
Yeah.
Well...
It's an input. So... Where can we see this wonderful musical?
I'll put all that in the links.
Oh, okay.
Because I haven't got the details.
No.
Well, actually, I might have. Probably on one of the places, isn't it?
I assume so.
Interesting, doesn't actually.
That's a bit.
Well, it's an unfree.
A bit of a. Well, I know, but you'd think that.
So.
Oh, right, freshofthemusical.co.uk.
Now, that's probably going to go in episode 251, but as we know, that's now going to be before 250 and after.
Is
using
it?
Your,
I see.
Thank you. Was that all right?
Yeah, it's fine.
That was a nice little 15-minute.